Hi, everybody. We're going to start in 1 minute. Good afternoon, everybody. I want to welcome you to our alumni panel. For the first time, we're doing this on Zoom, conveniently so, because our alumni are joining us from various different time zones and various places on this planet. So I first want to thank the SPS Alumni Office with Sonal and Danielle, who have been instrumental in supporting this and putting the Zoom together and getting all the organizational stuff out of the way. And I want to thank also our department at Davos for their support. And most of all, I want to thank the alumni for taking the time to join us. For those that don't know me, I'm Mechthild Schmidt-Feist, professor at DCoM. And I had the pleasure of teaching Addison, Abdalla, Shaiza, and Paolo. So I'll go right to that. And instead of introducing their bio with what they do today, which they know much better than I do, I want to share a screen with the way I know them and just have one slide to share with you. Hold on. Okay. Do you recognize yourselves? So I want to give over everybody with just a small sentence. Shaiza, who you see here in the middle at graduation, she came to us already with a lot of TV reporting experience. And I mostly recall our advising sessions. They always drifted to political and social discussions on female role models in modern Islam and her expectations. And she merged her TV and business interest in her infused editions internship and a minor in business, which is pretty much what she has pursued from here on out, if I see that correctly, right? Addison, who is usually a little bit camera shy because he's mostly behind the camera. And he came to NYU already accomplished in his many ventures between ad agency and producer. It seemed to me he was working 30-hour days and still got his DCoM work done. And you see him here with the black part. It's part of a senior project. I'll get to that in a moment. But we still had some fun. I found one low resolution picture of Kenny's, one of his classmates' media history presentation on online dance games. So you see him here. Kenny was apprenticing Addison to do online dance, which you see on the right screen here. And I almost think that is Abdalla in the back there with the camera up, but I'm not sure. If he has that picture, he can share it with me. So Paolo and Addison became friends and worked together on several projects, including their senior project. It was super involved. Maybe they remember it with horror. They probably had sleepless nights. And they rented equipment, studio space. Addison had space that he basically emptied out so the senior project could happen. And they used Kinect and 3D. And as always, Paolo based all of it on a philosophical concept of a critical mind. So this black image that you see down there, that was like a 3D motion capture rebuild for their senior project. And you see Paolo there in our design field trip we went to with a class. And last not least, Abdalla, who you see here also in a graduation picture. He had come to us and had come recently from Egypt. This was 2012. So his concern was about the Arab Spring, and his family back home fed into a 2012 media history essay on the impacts of social networks in Egypt. And we know how that has developed and changed over time. He already worked in the nascent UX and data science field and made his senior project Venture Plus, and got hired right away multiple times, I think by some headhunters that kept you moving from company to company. But this is all I know. So I'm just very curious to hear from them, their interpretation and their last years since they graduated from DCoM. The senior project students that are here are basically facing the same thing you faced then, not really knowing where life's going to take you. And they look forward to hear from you about all the things that went right and all the things that maybe didn't go so well. That's up to you to tell. We didn't agree ahead of time on an order. Is anyone interested to make a start? And otherwise, maybe I say ladies first and call on Shaiza.
Yeah, I'll go first. That's fine. So, hi everyone. It's really an honor to be here. Yes, Dr. Schmidt is right. We've had many interesting conversations during our advising sessions, and I actually still miss them to this day.
Shaiza, just very quickly, your video is out. Would you mind turning that on when you're speaking?
Sorry.
Right.
Okay, sorry. So basically my journey, NYU for me has been the entire package, be it the city, the education. It is very encompassing. And so when you join a place like NYU, I realized that I'd landed basically in a gold mine of opportunities. I enjoyed meeting people from all over the world, some still like call my friends. I had some great advisors, Dr. Schmidt, as well as, professors who helped guide me, as well as fellow alums who try to help me out, when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. As Dr. Schmidt mentioned, I have quite the broadcast experience. However, one internship changed that. I was doing an internship on the best franchises of the 21st century and companies, and it really piqued my interest into economics, which is why I went, and got a minor in it. So upon graduation, I realized that, I still want to work in media, but I decided to try my hand at some finance firms with the help of fellow alums. I had a lot of coffees in finance as well as media. They really guided me into how to prepare for an interview for a finance role, which is very different than a media role. But between the two different industries, I got my first offer from an investment bank. So, being a student with a lot of student debt, I just said, okay, let's do it. The role itself I was working in operations, which was supporting groups of traders. And I worked there for about a year and a half. It was quite challenging, very different than what I'm used to, but I really thoroughly enjoyed it. After about a year and a half, I was talking to my mentor at work, and I mentioned that I think I wanted to do more trading versus just supporting the traders. And that led to a bunch of coffees with people, which led to me being interviewed and landing a spot in trading equities. Equities is just the form of like one of the many instruments like stocks versus like derivatives and futures. I did that for about 4 years, and it was so interesting. No day was ever the same. And I know this is going to sound odd, but I was able to actually use some of my media experience and what I learned in my work, especially when I was, let's say, helping my managing director with putting out like, an announcement, or, just helping them with like regular media stuff. Of course, when I moved on to trading, that became less and less. I did that for about 4 years. And then I decided I think it was time for another challenge. It's how I ended up at this small, mid-sized private equity firm where I help small and mid-sized businesses who are doing good things get access to funds to do even better things. And yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. It's very, very interesting pathway, and interesting how media actually intersects even in sectors that seem far away from it. Who wants to go next? Please just volunteer.
I volunteer, Paolo.
Okay, good. Call on each other.
Sounds like the old days.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Nice to see everybody here. For me, I'm gonna try to make it short and precise. By the time I got into NYU, I was, trying to run my own firm, giving supports to doctors in their journey to go digital. So
I
you
should
could
have
imagine.
mentioned that, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine, that's fine. It was more like a nightmare, right? So for me, going to school was like really a relief. So it was like so much fun all the way. It was like not like an escape, but more like a sandbox where I can experiment new things, right? And kind of like have a parallel dimension where I can progress with my fellow classmates, right? And reach crazy points of enjoyment and, So after I graduated, for me, it was like going back to Chile. I had 2 daughters, right? So I had to like go back home and, kind of like update everybody. So I got involved in the mining sector, doing a lot of analytics, right? Optimizing energy consumptions, the start getting all about like digital clones, measuring everything, trying to make it more sustainable, right? And then, after a while, I went to aeronautics, right? For security, also very related to analytics, going back to the data, going back to the interface with, with our clients. So it was mostly resolving issues all day, every day, but having fun at the same time. And then, we were able to kind of like accumulate a little bit of money, right? And start our own fund to kind of like accelerate brands that we wanted to introduce to new markets. And yeah, now we're here, keep having fun and remembering good times with you guys. So I'm happy to be here and to answer any questions.
Hey, thank you so much. So Addison, since you called on Paolo, you're going to be next.
Yes.
Well, you're pointing at someone, but my screen is different than yours, so I'm pointing at you.
I'm pointing over at Abdalla.
You guys choose, I don't care.
I'm a city kid, native New Yorker. And when I got to NYU, I was already a contributing editor at National Geographic Traveler and the special projects producer for the National Geographic Society, which is a sort of why go back to school? And I had taken a very untraditional path, and I found myself being concerned that I didn't have enough formal education, despite the fact that I was achieving fairly significant professional goals, to hike up the corporate ladder. And at the time, I wasn't totally sold on what I was doing. I thought maybe I'd one day want to be the CEO of National Geographic, right? Rather than being out in the field and running to crazy places. I was doing a lot of work in post-Soviet Russia, the Baltic states, the Sahel region of Africa, which is great. I mean, you know, it's basically get paid to be curious. But I decided that I wasn't totally committed to that. So what if I wanted to be an executive? So I went to NYU, and rather than enrolling in a program that was relevant to the kind of work I was doing, which my then girlfriend described as being indulgent, she said, go, if you're going to do this, go and learn something that you really don't know. So while I was good at the information and the history and the anthropology at National Geographic, I had no idea how film and television and animation and voiceovers and everything else actually worked. So I enrolled in the DCoM program so I'd stop being the guy that walked into rooms saying, do that thing with that thing that you did last time that I liked, which is a very, it lacks in empathy, and it certainly doesn't make people feel like I appreciate their expertise. So I did this DCoM program. And when I walked out of it, I could do my own animatics. I could mock up my own animations in After Effects. I understood the methodology and the lexicons of suites of softwares that before might as well have been written in Aramaic. And it was exactly what I needed it to be. And I thought, oh, it's great. I've got a Bachelor of Science now from New York University, and I have all this technical knowledge, which, to be totally candid, Paolo and I spent most of our time applying it in the most gonzo way you could possibly imagine. There was no real use case for what he and I were dreaming up, but much like Paolo, this for me was paradise, right? It was literally just learning for the sake of learning. And Paolo, you know, he felt the same way. Abdalla over there, who's smiling cautiously, he felt the same way also, even though he's always been more mature than Paolo and I. And the funny thing, after having gone through this process, is I graduated, and it's worth noting that I left National Geographic and got a job at an ad agency. P.S. Knew nothing about advertising either when I got that job, so literally made that up as I was going along. Had a really interesting time learning about advertising while I was learning about digital communications and media at NYU. Graduated from NYU, immediately quit my job at the ad agency because I knew that's not what I wanted. And about 6 weeks later, Discovery called me and said, hey, are you available to do a project for us in Mauritania, Niger, Benin, Togo, and Nigeria, which fits into the work I was doing before I got to NYU. I was like, sure, I'll go and do that. That sounds great. I know how to do that. And that sounds like fun. And also I spent the last 3 years working at an ad agency chained to a desk and then like literally leaving to go to NYU and having the time of my life. So I went and did this project for Discovery. And lo and behold, here I am, whatever it is, 8 years later. I'm never going to be an executive. I'm not going to be the CEO of anything. You know, I'm in the middle of directing a documentary feature that films in 5 different countries, including Central China. I'm going from this into another television series that I'm directing and producing that films in Haiti, Brazil, Benin, and Nigeria, funnily enough. You know, I do exactly what I did before I got to National Geographic, but here's the trick. I do it better. And the reason I do it better is because I can plan for what I'm envisioning in my head with far greater accuracy because I actually understand all the things that need to be true in order to take things from vision through execution to delivery. And make no mistake, my popularity professionally in Hollywood, because studios give me the money. Like I'm definitely Hollywood. I've got agents and lawyers and managers and PR people and all this nonsense. The reason that I get hired now or people give me money or whatever the construct is not just because I have access to places like Nigeria to make these television series or Central China to make this movie, they actually know that I know how to make it. And that makes me a very safe bet because they know that I'm exceedingly responsible. And Paolo, keep that smile. No, down. Don't smile too broadly. They know I can do it. And I learned all of that. And no, Abdalla, you have to stop smiling also. I learned all of that at NYU with Professor Schmidt and Professor Krasner, who's over there in the corner. Hi. And NYU gave me all the gifts that I thought it was going to give me. I just didn't understand that it was going to be the gifts that it ended up being.
Well, that is very well said. A little later on, I'm going to ask you guys if you have any websites or any images that you want to share, but let me move this on to Abdalla right now.
All right, so I over-prepared a little bit, so I have some slides to share. Apologies, guys.
Don't apologize. That's why I'm asking the others to get ready to show something if they have it.
Yeah. Actually, start first. Okay. So are you able to see my screen at the moment?
Yes.
All right, awesome. So yeah, just a little bit about myself, as everyone else mentioned. I've been in the design business, I would say, for like about over 10 years now. I had the pleasure to basically have hands-on experience in user-centered design, design systems, and design thinking. Also specializing later in my career into machine learning related design, as well as data visualization and data driven UX design in general. And as everyone already know, I have my bachelor from the same program that we're here now talking about. And it was really eye-opening program for me also because my concentration was actually in interactive media and mobile devices. Before that, I was doing a little bit of computer science, like Professor Schmidt mentioned. I was into web design, web development, and I was doing that on the side as a freelancer and with agencies. But I came to NYU to basically explore more how I can take that to the next level. I loved media, I loved photography and videography. I knew that I want to be in the creative field, and actually what moved me into more UX design. I thought I can be basically an architect for the digital product or the digital world. Later on, I went to get my master's at USC, Young Young Academy, which is basically Master of Science that focus on innovation and design thinking. And I was fortunate enough to have been designed in the past for companies such as Google, Apple, Equinix, and Click into engineering tools and internal tools project. And recently moved a little bit more into the creative entrepreneurship world. And I'm working currently with a buddy of mine on Quam, which is a new startup. We're bootstrapping. There's no investment yet or funding, but we're basically building a product that can secure, like help the manufacturer to be able to basically configure very complex 3D configuration on the fly and send it to their clients, or be able to embed it to their web applications or websites. And it's a gap that we found in the market that we can help with. Excited to work on it. It's still hoping to launch the mid next year, the beta version, and get user testing done, as well as started doing some Indie Pixels, which is a UX initiative for me to basically make videos and write articles, and writing also book on design and sharing basically knowledge on design for everyone who's interested. I'm not planning to make any money out of it, and if I did, it will go back to either a design charity organization or go back to making more videos about design and design strategy and design thinking. And I wanted to talk a little bit about what I actually do, because until today also, like, some of my family members don't really know what I do. And it's still, so I wanted to explain a little bit about what user experience design is and what product or digital product design is. And according to the Interaction Design Foundation, user experience really relate to the look, feel, and usability, and elevate the look and feel and usability of a digital products, whether web applications or mobile product. So anything has to do with the product from a design perspective, user experience take care of it. And sorry, here we go. And to do a user experience or a good user experience for any digital product or product in general, you have to be in this sweet spot between what is possible, like from a technical perspective, and what is profitable from a business perspective, if it's a profit or money, but also if it's a product with a social impact or nonprofit, then your impact is different and profitability will be measured differently. And of course, the desirability of the product, how you will enjoy the solution or the product or the digital from a user perspective. And if we talk about the user experience design process in general, like I like to think of it as more of a framework. I define it for myself and for the teams that I had the pleasure to either lead or manage in my career as 2 or 3 main steps: explore, define, evaluate. And in the explore phase, for example, and I will explain it as one of the projects that I worked recently with Google. So I worked with Google with the TensorFlow team, which is the organization that had open source framework that is used by machine learning developers and engineers internally at Google and outside of Google as well, like MIT and Harvard researchers use also the framework. And in the Explorer stage, for example, this is where you actually start exploring. You do things like design sprints, design workshops, and this is a screenshot of a design workshop that we did virtually with 25 like team member from different team or product that we were working on. And the idea here is to basically through a set of activities that you do in a day or 2 or 3, whatever long it will take, to come up and think together as a team, like what are the problems we're trying to solve, sketching, ideating, come up with some vision of what we're trying to build. And from this design sprint, we come up with the product vision. For example, for this specific product, the vision was to how to unify the Google machine learning tools and features into a consistent, fractionless, and simple platform for the Alphabet ML engineers to begin with, but also for Google engineers, but also for other outside engineers that are using the platform for machine learning and build machine learning models. And we ended up going or coming up with 2 different or one project, we call it Project Tool Built, but in the cornerstone of it was a Google ML Hub that actually engineers can find machine learning models that are already built, vetted and compliant, and they can, instead of starting from scratch, finding a place for them to basically find this model, how to install it, and how to set up it, and how to integrate it to their own applications. So unfortunately, I won't be able to show the exact work that I've done because of the NDA agreement or non-disclosure agreement, but I can just briefly show a little bit of example of the deliverables that my team had to deliver for this project. And one of the things, or one of the deliverable we always have to deliver is the research finding summary, which is a document of how we conducted the user research, how we basically the methodology we used, and what are the pain points from the user perspective that we want to tackle / also recommendation moving forward. Another thing we do also in the define stage to define what are the personas of the users who will be using the applications. And what are their unique motivations of using this product. And that could also be multiple personas or multiple users, not only one. And taking all that what we learned in the past and trying to convert it to in an exercise we call how might we exercise. It's basically converting the design problem to a how might we problem. So how might we enable product X, for example, to do 1, 2, 3 in order to achieve a result for this specific persona. And we write as many as we can at the time. So one of the other deliverables that we can, or we are always give in the UX package is information architecture and interaction user flows breakdown, which is basically a diagram of like how we envision the product will work, right? And what is the input and output of it. And of course, the final thing that probably most of you would be familiar with is the mockups. This is the final thing that we come up with, the different views of the application. And this is actually one of the views that we're building for Quam, my application of my product. But just to give an example how it look like, give a little bit of specification on how it works, as well as we can create a click-through prototype when this mockups and start testing it with the user and get some feedback. So with that, I'm going to stop here. Like I made some slides about what is user experience and the history of it and where it's going. But just concerning the time, we can maybe share that later, or I'm happy also to share the presentation with everyone who's interested to look at it in their time. But really excited to be here, and thank you. Honored to be back and just talk about what I've been doing, and humble brag, like Addison.
Thank you very much, Abdalla. I know you're already scheduled for an interview with some of my students next week, so we'll try to hook into your various expertise. If anyone else has a website they want to share, either briefly talk about or a site they want to share and put in the chat for people to look at, that would be wonderful. And for those that are joining us a little bit late, I also want to add that since we have Zoom, we're lucky to not have to bring people or have to just resort to people who are in New York. So Addison is joining us from London. Abdalla is joining us from the West Coast. I think LA area still, right? Or where are you right now?
Palo Alto.
Palo Alto, okay. Paolo is joining us from Chile, Santiago, right? And Shaiza is joining us from the Boston area. So it's wonderful that you all could actually make it and are here. I would love to start with 2 questions, and then I would like to hand it over to some of my senior project students because they have some questions for you. I know all of you actually already were working in the field or in a similar or related field while you were here at NYU. But how did you get hired for your first job out of DCoM or out of grad school? Was that an automatic thing? What did you have to do? Who wants to take that?
I can go. So basically, when I graduated, I had already started interviewing and networking for the past 1.5 years. And what I did was I tapped into the NYU Alumni Network, Wasserman, as well as just fellow people on my LinkedIn. And I just asked them for a bunch of coffees. And a fellow NYU alum actually helped me secure a chat with some of the HR of the companies I was applying for. So that was a really good way to get my foot in the door. And it really showed me that the past 1.5 years, 2 years of constantly networking, keeping in touch with people was paying off. So, and that's how I ended up landing my first job out of NYU.
Who else has a story to share?
I don't know if the three of us, the rest of us, are really the best. I mean, Abdalla went and got a master's degree and started a business. Paolo is, as we all know, literally the permanent entrepreneur. I can't actually imagine him working for somebody else. And I just slummed it right back into where I'd come from.
Well, I know Abdalla had some jobs between undergrad and grad or while going to grad school. So maybe you want to fill us in on that.
Sure, yeah, I can share a little bit about that. I think, I mean, for anyone who like aspire to be a designer in any, not only UX designer, anything related to creative field, I think I would say number one that helped me, that at the time I was struggling because my portfolio was really wide. I did a little bit of everything. I think, like you mentioned, I did have some computer science background and web development background, but I also did a lot of photography and videography, and like I was exploring a lot of creative fields. So I think I struggled a little bit to kind of like, okay, I need to focus exactly on UX or product design. But what helped me, I think, at the time is for any designers, like you need a portfolio. You need to show some case studies and some designs that you made to actually get your foot in the door. I remember at one of the things that in between jobs I had, also getting an internship, and I believe is one of our professors at the time, Scott, and UVPH, and that was one of the things that I wanted to get a job or get an experience in the design agencies in New York, and that's something I didn't have at the time. So I basically volunteered myself to be an intern for free. I know it's still illegal, but I made sure I told them, like, I basically don't want any money. I just want to get an internship. I will work for free as long as I get the experience to get myself or to get my foot in the door, and also have a portfolio that I can show some client work that is actually client work. Before that, I had a lot of work that was more like a lot of freelance work, also a lot of work that was in the past and not related. So that helped me a little bit to kind of focus more on design and product design and start building my portfolio little by little. But for any designers out there, it's really hard to get into, especially if you don't have previous work or portfolio. So I would recommend do anything to basically have some case studies that you can show, rely on your friends and family. For example, if anyone want a website or want something to be designed, to design it just so you can show your process and the creative process. And most jobs, they will be looking for, that are related to the design, they will be looking for your process and what you have done to come up with the solution, not necessarily the final product or how it looks. If it looks great or bad, it's really not as important as how did you actually get into or find that final solution. What was your process? So the research you have done, the user you talked to, etc. Hopefully that helpful or makes sense. But that's what helped me in the past to get into UX design.
Okay, thank you. I mean, not everybody has to talk on every question. The last one that I have before I'm going to give it over to the students is that in undergraduate education, you typically have a mix of academic, of core courses, of DCoM courses, and also from employers, I keep hearing different things. Some people want somebody who is like a super expert maybe in Photoshop or in 3D. Some people want a generalist. Some people want somebody who has good speaking and communication skills, good general liberal arts kind of skills. What is your experience? What type of skills or what mixture of these hands-on versus hands-on or very targeted or sort of long-term skills? I consider liberal arts skills long-term skills. They don't change as fast as the various softwares and so on do. What was useful for you in your journey in the last few years?
I can go. Well, and I would like to open like a dialogue, you know, and kind of like throw the ball to Addison. Well, we can talk about Socrates. You know, we love, he's our Jesus. So he saved us, right?
That is typical, always going with philosophy.
Yeah, so I would like to start like playing the ball with critical thinking. I think critical thinking is key for everything. And kind of like start like compartmentalizing everything and having a secure position and a clear strategy of whatever you want to do. I want to go back a little bit to the early question, how to get, you know, your job, right? Even though if you're a contractor, just do your research, check the CEO, check the directory, you know, have a plan and go and pitch it. That's it. And try to fail very fast and you know, a lot of times. You learn it, packing it up, redo it, and try it again. So yeah. So Mr. Addison, how would you take it from critical thinking to what?
You're muted.
So as everybody knows, I'm a technological genius. You just saw it at work. You know, critical thinking was actually, you know, it's not DCoM. It's a core curriculum class. But you know, Paolo and I, like we lit up at that one. And part of the reason that we did, Abdalla, did you love critical thinking?
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Did you have Ray as your professor?
No, I don't remember the name, but yeah, I had someone else.
You definitely have Ray because you'd remember Ray. Paolo and I, we both agree that critical thinking is the key skill set for life. And to distill that into something digestible and useful, it's the practice of gathering information from multiple sources and synthesizing that into your own position, right? And having independent thought, because most hiring managers who you'd ever want to work with recognize that skill set. If you're just in there parroting stuff that you've learned from an expert, right? From a professor or from a book, verbatim, that just means that you can memorize things or that you have a good memory. Exhibiting, original thought, that's literally the difference in getting ahead, I feel. And to that end, as you're going into the marketplace, yeah, you'll need to get your foot into the door if you're switching industries, or you'll need to get your foot in the door if this is your first job, right? Like, these things are inherently true. But wherever it is that you end up, it's not the job you have, it's the manager that you work for, right? Because obviously you'll be qualified for the job, but you need to make sure you're working for somebody that recognizes that you have skill, talent, vision, and thought that is more valuable than the job you're currently in, because that's how you go up the ladder and move beyond where you are. And that's the difference between having a job and having a career.
Well said. Shaiza, do you want to join into this discussion?
Yeah, of course. Just to add on to what Addison and Paolo said, critical thinking to me was an incredible experience. I had Ray, and so it was incredibly mind-opening. The way it made me look at things, it really changed the way I process and digest information. So for me, that was honestly like, when I took that class, I was like, it was like a light bulb. Like, I know why I'm at the school, and it just sort of cemented that it was the best thing, for the best move I made. And to go into what Addison's saying about the managers, it's true. Having the right manager can make or break your experience. There's some managers who are super hands-on. I was a newbie in finance. Hell, even I was a newbie in broadcast at some point. And having someone guide you through it, who understands what you're trying to do, actually helps you get your vision out quicker. So, yeah.
Okay, I would like to move over to students. I know Chloe, Zilou, and Zinui submitted some questions. I'll start with Chloe. I have the questions here in case you don't have them in front of you. Do you want to ask your question?
Oh yeah, I have it in front of me too. So, hi, thank you all for sharing your experience, and I found that really beneficial. And I just had a question to ask. I want to know, like, how much do you think that you benefit from the identity of being an NYU graduate? So, like, in other words, does where you graduate weigh more than the portfolio you have to offer when applying for jobs, or do you think it's the other way around?
NYU is a great school, and it's got 100% brand recognition for every hiring manager in the United States of America. So is there brand value to NYU? Without a shadow of a doubt. But all that does is get you past them looking at your resume, be like, okay, you went to NYU, I know NYU, and I know it's, sorry, my language is terrible, so I'm working really hard to calibrate myself. So we know that you went to NYU, baller, right? and then they'll move on to your portfolio and everything else. So yeah, it's valuable, but you can't take it for granted to do all the heavy lifting for you.
Yep, that makes sense. Thank you.
Someone else?
I will say that is mostly like a responsibility, like almost like if you're pursuing, you know, the return of investment of how you invest in yourself. Like really, like you spend so much in educating yourself, so you better, you know, get that value back. So it makes you hungry. It makes you hungrier than, you know, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what Addison and Paolo said. I would say it definitely opened door for me and got my resume on top of the pile. But like as a designer, like you know, your portfolio is really important too. You have to show that you actually can do the work, you're a decent person. And also, but the good thing about like NYU, I would say, like, I think more is the community. Like there is always this camaraderie when I go and I was at Google, for example, or before that, and find other like NYU alumni, like that's right away like an open conversation, and you feel like you know these people, or there's a good community. Also on LinkedIn, you can reach out to your community or alumni and introduce yourself. Especially now that I'm moved on a little bit more to like the entrepreneurship career, which I need to probably talk to Paolo about to get some information / learn lessons from him. But that's also another thing that I can actually just reach out to LinkedIn community, and whether in California and anywhere in the world, you will find someone who went to NYU, which was really kind of funny and awesome. But yeah, all over the world, there's always NYU grads somewhere.
Well, thank you.
Just to piggyback off what Addison, Paolo, and Abdalla said, yes, NYU has global brand recognition. It is fantastic. However, your work will have to speak for itself. It'll just open the door for you. It'll make people give you more of a chance. And like I said, everyone knows NYU, you know, but the portfolio is just as important. When I used to be in broadcast, my reel was the most important thing. It didn't matter if I was at a brand new school or not. They want to know, okay, can you do it though? So yeah.
Actually, I'll tack on one more thing since we're talking about NYU and the work. There's the manager, but there's also two intrinsic pieces to being in the workforce. A, do people want to be around you? Right? You know, like, and especially now where we're not around each other as much as we were in the past, right? People want to, you know, like you, right? You know, and not say that any of you are unlikable, but, you know, be serious about your career, but don't sacrifice your personality in aid of that, right? Like have a personality, make jokes, right? Make good jokes. You know, express yourself in a way where people feel like they actually know you.
Bad jokes are okay too. Bad jokes. Bad
jokes. And that's my department, by the way, just so everybody knows. In class, I was the king of the bad joke. And the other thing is trust. And I can't emphasize that enough. You know, like they have to trust you to do the work. And if people trust you to do the work, right, even if you're on a learning curve and your manager knows that you said, yeah, I can do this, but they know that you have to spend the weekend figuring out how to actually do it, right? If you deliver it, then you can have more of a relationship because they'll trust you to do the work and they'll manage you less and get to know you better.
Yeah.
Okay, Chloe, you had another question, right?
Oh, yeah. So my other question is that I don't know if how much you can answer this, because I realized that many of you kind of like went to school after having a job kind of thing. But then my question was, as a new professional going into the work sphere, is there like an important lesson that you learned that is like true to every position that you worked at?
What I will say is what I've learned even before I came to NYU as well as after NYU is, if you're going to approach anyone, it doesn't matter what profession it is, know what they do, understand the company, understand the business, be it a TV network, be it, a investment bank, a hedge fund, wherever it does. Because when you go into these, you're having an opportunity to talk to people. And like Addison said, you want people to, be yourself. And people like to be around people that they like, right? But you have to talk. And if they find out that you don't know what you're talking about, it actually comes across as disingenuous, and no one wants that. I can give you an example. About 2 years after I graduated, I got a request on LinkedIn. It wasn't from an NYU alum, but it was just from some other kid that was trying to get into finance. And I said, yeah, sure, we can talk. But when we had our call, he had no idea about anything, not even like what he wanted to apply for. And I told him nicely, like, hey, if you're going to talk to somebody more senior than me, I would brush up on that. So that's the advice I would give.
Yeah, thank you.
I would like to say something about this. And I will set it up as a first question, like one first question that we all would like to have, like the ones that you would like to have tattoo in your arm, like, oh, let me remember this, is how you deprogram yourselves. Like, how, we're trained somehow, how we influence for so many things, so many changing variables, right? But how we take control of that influence that we're not aware that we're being influenced. Some people call them bias. Abdalla could say how much trouble you guys at the shop are dealing with the biases, right? And really it's like that. It's like how you can reprogram yourself or deprogram, like stop doing something that you acquire just almost for osmosis, right? What habit that you have that maybe it wasn't your decision, something that came out automatic, right? So kind of like reconstruct your kind of like activity system, but from zero, from first principles, right? From first principles, you construct your activity system, right? But not something that's built on something else. Try to start it all from zero or from -1, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, any more questions or replies to Chloe? Otherwise, I'm going to ask Zilu to ask her questions.
Hi everyone, I'm Zilu Wang, and thank you all for sharing your experience with us. And here's my question. Is your current job directly related to your college major? And is it important for a fresh graduate to choose a job consistent with their college major?
I guess I'll go first. No, my job is not really related to my college, degree. However, it has been instrumental in helping me navigate, this new industry. People come and tap on me when they have a question about anything to public speaking, to like some other media aspects like public relations. And, I'm able to give some more feedback, which I think adds to my value. What I would say to any undergrad who is graduating is, sometimes we come out of school thinking we're going to do one thing. I thought I was going to be the next Cristiano Amanpour, and sometimes you stumble onto something you love, and you're like, oh, I find this interesting. And so it doesn't really have to be one straight path. It can be, you start one place and you end up somewhere else, and that's okay. When I was a trader, I had people who were like English majors, there's some people with finance majors, but a lot of people were like history majors, art history, and all this stuff. So no, it's not a very rigid path necessarily if you choose to not let it be.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Let me ask a quick question to that, Shaiza, because I know you had that business minor at Stern. Did that not relate directly to your first job? So am I mistaken?
Well, it did, but the difference is what we learned in school versus what I had to learn on the job really differed. it's just, you know, the practical experience is completely different. But no, my it did give me a good base on how the financial systems work in this country. But to really understand like what I do to support or work, you know, in that field, it was just like completely different. Nothing's ever what you think it might be.
I just want to add to what Shaiza just mentioned or said earlier. I think it also, part of it, it depends on what you want to do or what you're studying. So for example, like if you want to perform surgeries and be a doctor, please study medicine because you cannot do surgery without knowing what you're doing. But in our area, I think it will be different. So in the digital design world, for example, that I can speak of more, or the tech world and entrepreneurship as well, it is constantly a trial and error process. And I think that comes also from the education side of things. Like, I think what I'm doing right now is very related to what I studied back in my program at NYU. However, at the time, maybe I didn't know it, or I didn't realize, for example, the video production class that I did and I had really enjoyed doing was really related to computer science. But now I can actually use the professional camera and do like videos just for fun, and been doing photography and filmography on the side. So it really depends, but I think it's also an opportunity for you to explore. I think we think of education as I need to get this education in order to do that thing. But one of the good things about the DCoM program was for you to basically learn about a bunch of things, try and error, have fun, and along the way, be able to pretty much figure out what you want to do next if you really don't know. But yeah, I think that's basically my experience.
Thank you.
I'll tack on a few sentences to that. Part of what you learn in school is the subject, right? But you also learn a new form of self-discipline. And that's not material to the material, right? That's simply how you run your life, how you learn, and what you choose to keep and what you choose to let go of, and how you choose to move forward, right? This is a much more Paolo-esque answer in its philosophy. And never discount how much the NYU experience gives you beyond just the material, about shaping who you are and how you approach problem solving and learning, right? Because hopefully we are all learning until the curtain goes down, right? Like this is how to stay alive. So if you take that with you into your professional experiences, right? This is a bonus and critical bonus, right? Because some people go in like, I learned all of this stuff and I know this and I'm going to do this job for you, right? And that's one type of person that people hire, right? But you're all in school together the same way that the four of us were in school together. Now, as you can tell, we all got along, right? We're smiling like banshees during this call. But we've all gone on to have careers, right? We are all doing what we want to do. But here's the trick. We all got really good grades, right? We're all pretty OCD in our own ways. Like I keep a spreadsheet of all of my subscriptions broken out in tabs by film, newspaper, magazine, along with how much I pay and which date of the month I get charged for them. Not because I need to balance my budget that closely, because that's just how my mind works. But I assure you, nobody who knows me would ever guess that that's how I run my life. And the trick, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, is that if you can play both sides of the fence and have the discipline, have the organization about how to run your life yourself, right? It makes it easier to have a human relationship on top of that. And it goes back to being managed and trust and so on and so forth. And these are not things, respectfully, that you're going to learn necessarily from Professor Schmidt herself, right? She'll give you the structure in her class, right? You'll do the work, but the answers really come from within you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Silu, you had another question, right?
Yeah, I do have another question. And the other question is, what do employers look for in new graduates from the school?
10 years experience.
I think that's a tough question. And the great thing is all four of us have taken very different tracks, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's really industry dependent. I've got about 50 people working for me right now across a few different projects. But I guarantee you, what I'm looking for is not what Abdalla's looking for. So I think, can you be more specific? Like, what's your focus? You're a DCoM major, but DCoM has got a few sub verticals. What's your focus within your DCoM?
I mean, for me? Yeah.
Sure, you asked the question.
Interactive design.
And then
that's my side of things. All right. Yeah, I mean, I can speak to my own experience, and it is unfortunate that a lot of design agencies, companies are looking for young designers or junior designers joining with a lot of experience. However, I would say for like a junior person who's joining the team, and in the interviews that have been in the past, we always look for someone who can show initiative, who know how to think critically, like we talked earlier, who also show process. As long as you have a portfolio, as long as you have something to show your design thinking, your process of coming up with a solution, sketching, post-it notes, all these things, like design managers like myself and others will love it and will be happy to actually provide more guidance as well future-wise. So yeah, I would say like also internships helps a lot. But from a design perspective or interaction design perspective, this is basically what the manager will be looking for. I would say also, like, if it's a technical, it depends from company to another as well. Like also Addison's, like even in the design industry or interaction design industry. So some companies, they will require you to be more technical, know a little bit of code or understand frameworks. Some other company will be purely looking for someone who is very into the creative side of things and can actually be strong from the visual design perspective. So I think, like Shaiza mentioned earlier, I would see the companies that you're trying to apply for or the teams that you're going to be working with and do a little bit of online research. There's a lot of information now out there that can talk a little bit about the creative, like the interview process. Reach out to anyone you know that already working in the companies. And again, it should be like, could be like a list of companies that you wish to work for, just to get an idea of what is the design interview process, what are the questions they will be asking. Some companies require design exercise that you have to do. Some other companies, you will just do whiteboarding session in the interviews instead of a take-home design exercise. So hopefully that little bit of research will give you a little idea on each company and their hiring process, if that, hopefully that's helpful or makes sense.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, I think we're ready to move on to Xingyue, who also has 2 questions waiting.
Hi, I'm Xingyue, and thank you for sharing with us.
Can you speak up a little bit?
My first question is, do you have any suggestion about mistakes we should pay more attention to, like search for a job or interview or daily work?
The question is about any mistakes that maybe new graduates typically make, something they should watch out for.
I will go. I will say getting emotionally attached to a project, to a client, or, to something related to.
Yeah, Paolo just dropped the mic on that one.
Yeah.
I would say one thing, even though I'm not being interviewed here, something basic, and I shared that experience with my students. be respectful of their time. So be on time and be prepared. If I once made the mistake, I had a good excuse, but still not good enough, of being late for an interview. That's a bad thing.
If I can add one thing that maybe on the other side, I would say, I wish that I've applied more to jobs that I thought I'm not qualified for. Because sometimes the job's description could be deceiving, or could be asking for so many years, like we mentioned. But if there's any job or like a thing that you're really interested, or a project you're interested to work on, you should take the initiative and apply, even though you think that you're not qualified yet, but you never know what's going to happen. So I wish I would have basically went for more for what I wanted / applied for the jobs that I thought I'm not qualified for in the past.
To piggyback of what Abdalla was saying is, I also was the same when I graduated. However, after a couple of years, I realized that a lot of times a lot of people just, if you don't make an effort for it, you may miss out an opportunity. I actually ended up getting an email from a competing bank for an interview, but it was for like a senior VP role. And here I am, just a senior analyst. And I was just like, do they want to talk to me? And, my boyfriend at the time was like, just take it. Doesn't matter. They obviously like something about you. And, I didn't end up getting that job, but it was one of the best interviews I've ever had. It's, I experienced what it's like to interview for more senior roles and how much different it is than when you're new in the field.
That's a great advice. So just the experience of an interview, I know, Zinyu, you have another question also, right?
Yes. So after graduating, do you prefer starting your own business or working at companies to accumulate more experiences?
I think both have their strengths, and I think they both work. I think it's important to experience both. I do come from a family of entrepreneurs. My parents own their own wholesale business, which I worked all my life growing up. And I really do feel that strongly helped me in my work ethic, in just understanding how entire companies run. And it's helped me in my school as well as, my career. So I think it's either way is you can learn from both, and then you can decide which one you like better.
Thank you.
Well, we have very entrepreneurial people here. So what do you think? Is it better to first work for another company to learn your ropes, or go right ahead and do your own stuff?
Work for somebody else, make mistakes with their money and their stuff, and then go and do it yourself. I mean, I agree. Shaiza makes a very good point, right? You actually learn much more when you're on the line, right? But unless you are crystal clear about what it is that you're doing, then, learn someplace else and then go and do it, right? Like, to be an entrepreneur, you have to really, it's a relationship. Like, it's a marriage. So you wouldn't get married because you felt like it, right? You have to feel the same way about starting your own business.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think I can add to that it's very hard also to be an entrepreneur and to start something from scratch. And from my own experience, I always, even back when I started my career or still at NYU, I always had something on the side that I make sure that I can pay my bills. For example, as of today, I'm working on my startup, which is self-funding with a buddy of mine. However, I'm still doing some design consulting work also, because it takes really long time to build your user base, your consumers. It takes a long time to actually start making profit and have a successful business. So with that being said, I would say everyone's experience is different. I would just maybe search a little bit more what you would like to do, and have someone, for example, for me with a family and a kid now, and like I can't really jump into things without absolutely have a plan or some support behind me. But however, if you're just like, this is really what you want to do, just find ways to basically, eat ends meet beside your passion. I always had a side hustle, like they say, on the side of my actual day-to-day or 9-to-5 job. I always worked on my passion project on the side, and that kind of kept me going, and made me feel good, and made me feel also like that I am building not only the career or 9-to-5 career, but I was also building my personality, whether online or talking about design or sharing more, and also entrepreneurship. So it really depends, I would say, but 9-to-5 jobs as well, with by any means, you can learn a lot and you can build your own experience, and you can also, make a lot of money and make mistakes, like Addison said, and with someone else's dime pretty much before you lose your money.
And another thing that's important to note, especially because this is a DCoM session, right? Everybody here is either making film and television, designing websites, in this arena of work right now. In this era that we're living in, people start their own business, right? And then they give it a name and they give it a brand and so on and so forth. That's not owning your own business. That is just branding yourself as a sole proprietorship, according to the IRS. Owning your own business means having employees, workers' comp, liability insurance, being concerned with things like payroll taxes and other very, very unromantic things that have nothing to do with what you're passionate about. So also be clear about the division between these two things, right? If you graduate and you want to start NewCo and brand it and market yourself as that, and maybe hire a couple of freelancers once in a while if the work picks up, like that's one thing. But starting a business, really starting a business, is something entirely different. And I only realized that when I went to work for that ad agency when I was at NYU, right? Ad agency, knew nothing about advertising, never did anything in advertising again. But weirdly, while I was there, I actually learned about things like payroll taxes and workers' comp insurance that actually helped me run my business now, right? But I learned that not because I took a class at NYU. I learned that because I learned it from the ad agency. So I benefited inadvertently from that, but it also made it very clear about the division between these two things.
I would like to add to that. I will be a little bit more radical. I will say that, if you can just sleep in like a little bit, a little room or whatever, you don't have big spends, or your fixed cost is low, just go bananas. Just start failing fast, and it's like start trading. You need to get to that discipline of doing one thing every day, right? And have a process, and to have a clear strategy. So the more hours or time that you have on the craft itself, it gives you an advantage, right? So always have something running behind, even though you have a job, whatever, but always have some operations. You have so many options today. I mean, whatever it is, just keep yourself doing something for your own wallet, whatever it is, your own portfolio, and just do it in the side. Just stay late, wake up earlier, just keep something running behind, probably more than one, but whatever you're capable.
Spoken by the true master who never has anything less than 8 things going on simultaneously. Successfully, I might add.
Well, you're great advertising for each other. We have a few more students, and I know that Livingston has a question he just told me. So, floor is yours, Livingston.
Yes, what would be a good way of connecting with others? Especially it's been a little bit more difficult being with the COVID through NYU, the connecting with other creatives or just even other intellects has been a little bit more difficult. And that's been the thing I've been looking for the most and craving the most. What would be, because even there's like LinkedIn and those social networks, but at the same time, it's a little still cold in a sense of that first initial connect. What would you suggest is a possible way of going about bridging or that entry connection point?
I will say quick. I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
No, it's okay, Paolo. Go ahead.
I would just say just sharing big problems, like tell someone that you have a big issue to resolve, a big challenge, and they can pitch in. And if they don't pitch in, that's it. Go next, and yeah, that way you start sharing a common problem. That was a quick one to go.
I would like to add to that. What I've noticed because of the new, COVID time we're in, I've done a lot of outdoor coffees and outdoor drinks with people who just want to learn more about what I do, or maybe when I want to learn more about what they do. And, sending a quick note on LinkedIn works wonders. You'd be surprised to say, hey, I want to learn more about what you do and how you do it. And I've even done a few on Zoom. And I know it seems a bit impersonal, but given the times we're in now, it's a pretty decent alternative.
Totally. I want to add to that it is becoming the norm now, having Zoom meetings. And so as much as we like to go back to the normal before, I think more and more people are receptive to having a coffee or a Zoom call or over a Zoom call or having a chat. It doesn't have to be like something really stressful or work related. But also, as she mentioned, if you reach out to someone to just ask about, like, I just want to learn this specific area, of course, make it personal, but I want to learn how you got to that, like, whatever work or job. I want to learn about what you think in related to this problem or project. And most people, like we all, I think we're all a good example of that. We like to talk about ourselves. So people will be happily come and tell you and share with you, as long as you are showing that you're curious about something they have done, not necessarily like, I want to, because also, I mean, I find it a little bit, not disrespectful, but a little bit when someone asks me for my time or picking my brain just for picking my brain. I appreciate it, of course, but in the same time, so what I'm also going to have out of this, of course, sharing the knowledge is important. But if you're asking about something specific related to my work or my job or whatever I want to do, that will actually make me more receptive to, like, oh, no, this person really made the effort to know more about me and want to learn about something that I've done, and I will be happy to share. And then the conversation will be more easier, or the entry point would be more easier than just out of the blue asking someone, to pick their brain or solving my problem instead of knowing what they have been doing so far. Hopefully that makes sense or helpful.
Would just like to add to that. Also, don't be scared to reach out to people in senior positions. I know a lot of people get intimidated by that, but don't, because usually, since they're in such senior positions, they have such a vast amount of experience, and they're more than happy to share it with you.
May I add something to it? I would say, since you're still at NYU, Livingston, I would say a good way to make connections is also to work with other students. Since I know you, I know you're technically extremely adept with like audio technology and video and so on. There are a lot of people probably who would like that. So if you work on a student project, be it at DCoM or be it at Tisch, I think they have some bulletin boards or so where they basically like help wanted things. So if someone says, wow, you know, I worked with someone and I know that he can actually do what's listed on his resume, it's not just making it up, and he's great to work with and he's reliable, that translates later into saying, you know, oh, I'm going to call on my buddy from NYU. I've worked with him. Or if it's not NYU, if it's private, you know, just that people get to know you. And it's not just about skills, but about you as a personality and the trust that they have in you. I think that that doesn't earn you money right away, but I think it's an investment for the future. I don't know if our guys here would agree, or Shaiza would agree. Do you work with people you met at NYU?
I have. You know, at my previous job at Goldman, I've worked with Illinois, even at my job at Vegas at the Fox News station. I've worked with, there was one NYU alum there, a little far away, but not too far away. I would like to add one more thing is, don't ever say no to talking to someone. You may not think they directly correlate to what you're trying to achieve, but the truth is sometimes people know things or know people that you don't know they know. So I would never turn down an opportunity just to have a chat with someone. Or when you go to, like, I don't know, are you guys still doing the Wasserman job fairs right now? If you do have the opportunity to go to one, speak to your fellow cohort, not just the people who are.
Okay, any more comments for this? I think we have a few minutes left for like general questions. So if anyone else in the audience has a question, please just speak up and ask. I don't want to call on someone necessarily, although someone from my class is also here. Sam, did you want to ask anything? Because you're considering a career change, right?
Yes, I am, but it's towards the medical field. But I think it's really interesting how it was changed from, like, for Shaiza, like to investment banking and all that.
So do you want to ask a question about that, or has it been pretty much answered?
It's been pretty much answered. It's very thorough, thanks.
Okay. Anyone else wants to ask a question? Or just say hi? I know April is here.
Sorry, I'm muted, so I was, but I am here, and I wanted to say how happy I am to see students that I've worked with in the past. I did, you know, the question that I had to do with COVID, and I believe that somebody else had asked it about, because I can see that so much is done it from home, but I imagine with Addison, it's a more complicated issue if you're directing and you're out in all of these other countries and places doing things. That the impact might have been a larger impact on the kind of work you do. I don't know, but that was just one of the things I was thinking about.
Well, I mean, it certainly was. I was definitely grounded like everybody else. And I just sat at home cooking up new crazy ideas and then wrote them. And then in sort of, you know, the end of last year, I went to the studios and said, here are my new crazy ideas. And then they gave me money. And now I get COVID tested every day of my life. My insurances are, going back to owning your own business, are absolutely bonkers, bananas, insane. I have people that get COVID in countries where, you know, medical care is not what you experience in New York City, which is challenging. It's much more of a high wire act, you know. There's always a bit of edge of paranoia. to all of it. And, you know, Livingston, to your point about, you know, seeing people and feeling disconnected, sometimes even when you're with people, we're disconnected from them because there's this sort of underlying hum of menace, right? It's like, what if I'm giving somebody COVID, right? For people, you know, like that's always my big concern. It's not even if I'm getting it, it's having it, not knowing it, and then giving it to somebody else. And that informs all physical interaction, which makes it difficult to have, you know, serendipity, for lack of a better word, right? To meet somebody new and dynamic and exciting, right? Which we all want. It doesn't matter if you're in school or you've graduated or you have a job, you're the CEO, it doesn't matter, right? Like, you want to feel alive. The only way I resolve that is when I'm not in the field. Like right now I'm sitting in my house in London, you know, and I've got one place I go to, right? And then LA, when I'm in LA, because that's why I split my time between the two, I've got one place that I go to. And the way I've resolved this in my head is to have a place. Now, these are social places, right? Where there's, you know, regular characters, right? But also people that come in and out, and it delivers on that need for engagement, for intellectual engagement, even for emotional engagement sometimes, you know, for the kind of gonzo chats that Paolo and I used to totally distract the class from, right? Like those kind of things, right? Like you have to get them from someplace, but I just go to the same places. And I don't know what neighborhood you live in, but maybe there's someplace, right, where there's something going on where you just sort of plant your flag and throw the dice, because more than ever, we're all kind of throwing the dice, right? None of us have lived through a pandemic before. We're all making it up as we go along.
I also had another question, if you don't mind, Matilde, which is, I'm not sure how aware you folks are because you're early in the field, but, you know, we're going through this period of the Great Resignation, and all of these people are leaving work, changing work, doing all of those things. And I'm wondering if you are aware of it, if it has an impact, and if it's changing the dynamic of the people who are new in the fields.
In the absence, I will fill in, and then somebody who does something different from me speak up. Film and television is a tricky business at the best of times, and if you work at the career level and you were still stitching things together, going to Abdalla's point about side hustle, right? You probably couldn't survive being in the entertainment business if it was a gig-based thing for you. So we lost definitely a portion of the workforce. Now film and television has boomed back, but like you have people, in April of this year, I was on a set that had a COVID officer who had literally been in the wardrobe department 3 months ago, but had taken like a 2-hour course to be a COVID officer and was now a COVID officer. And all of a sudden we saw, or I certainly noticed and talked about other people, people making these huge pivots, right? To try and stay alive and to do things and just to keep things going. And sometimes it was ill-advised, and other times people left. And I know a couple of people that stopped working in entertainment and went and did something else. One of them opened up a restaurant, which also during the pandemic is the craziest. I keep on wanting to say bad words and I keep on stopping myself. I can do it here, but not in front of my kid. It's amazing. Somebody who literally left film and television to open up a restaurant in the middle of the pandemic. And this person is the happier than they've ever been before in their lives. So, all bets are off. Somebody else?
I'll go ahead, Abdalla. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
All I was going to say is I have noticed that some of my coworkers have left their jobs And yes, it has increased the workload. However, I think what's happening is people are trying to realign themselves with their passion. And that's such a very good thing. I mean, if I had a burning passion for something, I would be doing the same. I think it's a great opportunity right now in this time of COVID.
Yeah, I was definitely going to second what Addison said and Shaiza. And I think it was the very first time for me, myself also, the COVID allowed me to basically, or other people to pause for the very first time, and you're just sitting with yourself in your own place, thinking about like maybe your life and what you want to do. And a lot of people maybe realize that they need to do other things. It's definitely for myself, from my own experience, I would say it pushed me, especially after losing my mom last year for COVID as well. It definitely pushed me to go and focus more towards and creative entrepreneurship, because that's something that I wanted to do for the long time. And that what happened with COVID and my mom, like it was not the only thing, but big part of why I was decided to, okay, it's now or never, or at least I will try. If it didn't work out, it's fine. I have still my career in design that I always go back to and lean on again. The other thing I wanted to maybe share is from the perspective of a lot of people talking about the employees that they are leaving, but no one talking about the employees that they are staying. So I think a lot, like it's a good thing, also a good time for companies to realize why these employees are staying and how can you do better in order to actually make their employees happy, rather than just focus on who's leaving the company. And I guess that's more from a company perspective or employer perspective, but it's also interesting to like point to think about it from the other side of things, not only the people who are leaving.
That's a very good point, Abdalla. Thank you, and my condolences. I didn't know about your mother. Sorry to hear that.
Thank you.
Okay. I think we're almost out of time. I would like to ask a last question. Is there anything important that you wanted to share that somehow nobody asked? Or if not, is there any sort of big blunder or funny story you want to share for the end? Something you did wrong, and maybe that didn't turn out so bad.
I mean, I have a story. When I first started at Goldman, I was in charge of getting a certain report done. And before I released the report, I was supposed to get my client's signature on it. And I didn't understand that because I was quickly trained on it. And when it was released with, the SEC, because it just submitted to the SEC before they released it, we got a call from the client saying, well, they never signed off on it. And everyone obviously turned to me. And I was like super worried I was going to get fired over this. But I'm thinking like, no one told me I had to get it signed off. But regardless, like I had a great manager at the time who was like, okay, I went and told him, I'm like, oh, this is what's happened. And, he worked with me. Yeah, we try to figure out how not to make that same mistake again, maybe improve our training protocols and everything. But yeah, so that's my little funny, scary story.
Anyone else?
Well, I was just going to add it quickly. Not so long ago, when I just got to Chile, we got this big mining company called Anglo American. You guys might hear about them, right? So as a contractor, it's very difficult to deal with, such a huge company, right? And so they always in the power position. So they actually kill one of our dear projects, right? That they will be very sustainable for them and to basically, minimize the impact of water consumption. So they killed the project, and I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna work with this client again. And I just dropped a huge account, and I didn't really care. And I got in trouble with my partners, and basically was very collapsing. I have to like, reset my entire company just because I dropped a huge client. And, at the end of the day, it was a good thing. I'm still thinking about it.
Yeah, I guess not to sound trite, but to put Paolo's very salient experience into a fortune cookie. When God closes a door, stop it, Abdalla. I'm trying to be serious here. When God closes the door, he opens a window. Now, we've all heard this saying, right? You can take the God out if you want. But the meta of that philosophy is true. And there are really two types of people in this world. They're the people that get knocked down that don't get back up, and the people that get knocked down that get back up. Period. Because everyone gets knocked down. And so just choose to get up. And also try not to make the same mistake twice.
I agree with
for different reasons.
I agree completely with Addison. Okay to make a mistake, but you got to learn from it, make sure it doesn't happen again. But I'll also add that remember that people are always on your side, even when things get tough. They want you to do well. So even if you make a mistake, it's okay. Just figure out how you made it and not to do it ever again.
Beautiful words.
Okay, shall we keep that as the last word? Any other last words? Going once, going twice.
Drop the mic right there.
Well,
thank you, Professor Schmidt.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say thank you, Professor Schmidt. Not only was this fun, it was so nice to see the comrades in arms back together again. Obviously, we haven't skipped a beat. And it's so nice to hear what the concerns are for this new group, because they're entering into a world that's vastly different from the one that we entered into.
But I still think your experience is very valid, and that the courage that you have and the courage to change fields also to do what was right for you at the moment. And I think that probably resonates. I'll hear about it later. So I thank you, Lloyd. It was really wonderful to catch up with you guys. And at some point, you're all going to have to send me like pictures of your kids. I heard several of you have them, right? So gonna get
I imagine we have a 13-year-old now.
How old?
13.
13. Wow. Okay. I know Abdalla has a little girl. How old is she?
She is 2 right now.
That's
I'm actually looking for a picture of her. I don't know if you can see this.
Oh,
there you go.
Yep, got it. Adorable.
I know Paolo also mentioned kids. So
yeah, 7 and 5.
7 and 5.
Sophie,
okay.
7.
Oh, wow.
5.
Oh, your daughter's name is Sophie?
Sophie, yeah, Sophie and Mila. 7 and 5.
My kids are Sophia and Felix, but they're much older. Shaiza, sorry to put you on the spot. I don't know if you have family. Your own family, I mean.
Yeah, but I did recently get married. So
congratulations.
Congratulations.
Yeah. And Professor Schmidt, thank you so much for putting this together. And to all the students here, if you guys have any questions, you want to reach out, feel free to add me on LinkedIn or email me on my NYU email address. And if you guys don't have it, it's sm4119@nyu.edu. I can put it in the chat box and I'd be happy to, talk to you guys.
Right. Yeah, if you guys want to, please put your email or website in the chat and I'll pass it on. And we'll be respectful with it, I promise.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll be happy to connect with anyone who would like to.
Oh.
So thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to see you and to see what's happened. It is actually not a burden. It is so nice to have a reason to catch up. And yeah, stay in touch. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
You guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.